It's okay to love China. You know, the current political climate at the moment is really, really harsh. We've got this big trade war at the moment. We've got America and China sort of deadlocked in all this tit-for-tat nonsense. So you've got a lot of anti-Western stuff being fed to the populace of China, and of course a big anti-American, especially, sentiment in China at the moment. And in the West, of course, we've got a lot of anti-China sentiment because of all the sort of policies and the trade war stuff. And, you know, so basically you've got all sorts of crap on both sides. Add to that this whole Hong Kong thing that's going on at the moment, where you've got all these pro-democracy protesters and, you know, all the people that are trying to rally support from the Western world saying it's another Tiananmen Square, you know, we need to protect freedom of speech and all that kind of thing. So you've got a lot of sympathy coming from the West, you've got a lot of hate coming from China, and again, you've got a thing where there's a lot of sort of, what can I say, loggerheads, deadlocks. And unfortunately, as a result, we're having on the Chinese side a lot of hate for America, a lot of hate for the West. And in the free world, you have a lot of hate for China. And I really, really want to put my foot down here, because something that I've always tried to portray through my videos is that China is human. China has that human element which is beyond the politics, beyond the nonsense that you see on the news, and beyond all of the sort of political crap that's going on. Because please try and remember that the Chinese people themselves have absolutely no control over what their government does. I would like to give you guys a little bit of backstory here. You know, having lived in China for such a long time, I've met a lot of very good people, and I've seen how people have grown. A guy in particular I remember very well is a long time ago. The guy's name was Robin. He approached me randomly on the street, and he did this in order to practice his English. And anyone who's ever lived in China or even visited China probably knows that, number one, it's either a scam if someone comes to say they want to practice English, or number two, genuinely you have somebody who's just trying to better themselves and they don't have any other way to practice their English other than paying a very expensive training center or something like that. So they will actually seek out foreigners on the street and just try to strike up conversations. Anyway, the thing is, the guy's just recently graduated, he can't get a job, he's dirt poor, but he's trying his best. I could see he was really putting in a lot of effort. He was trying to dress well, he was trying to, you know, meet people. And I hung out with him a couple of times and helped him with some of his English, and we used to chat, and he used to call me his big brother. I used to call him my little brother. And, you know, I remember, even though he was a man of little means, he always tried his absolute best to try and treat me for dinner and be very generous towards me. And I could see the situation the guy was in. Everything was working against him, but he still tried his absolute best to become successful. He did actually finally eventually get a fairly good office job. I say fairly good. For Shenzhen, it was very low paying, but he could actually kind of pursue a career. And so I saw him go somewhere, which was fantastic. I mean, I have countless stories of these very young, promising people that I met. And please remember, the amount of time that I've spent in China is a long time. You can see someone go from a child to an adult in 14 years. You can see a young adult become a successful person, a successful businessman, or, you know, something like that in that time. So the people that I met initially, and the people that I used to teach and train initially back in 2006, 2007, right now, you know, they're in a completely different chapter of their lives. They've gone somewhere, or they haven't gone somewhere. I've seen both. And when I see all this anti-China rhetoric and all the sort of anti-China feelings, which I'll be honest, I very often get that, and it's a little misguided, because my sort of anti-China feelings are not anti-China, they're anti-CCP, they're anti-communist government, they're anti these crappy policies that are always being put in place. And while I quite honestly understand why they have to put those policies in place sometimes, because when you understand China, you understand that certain policies that are put in place by the CCP are there in order to just stop chaos from erupting, I still don't like the way that the government treats the people. Now, before people jump out and start saying, oh, but you know what, the Communist Party is amazing, they brought all these millions and millions of people out of poverty. Don't forget who put those people in poverty in the first place, okay? It was the government policies, it was Mao Zedong's starvation and crazy Great Leap Backwards and the cultural devolution and all that actually made people poor like that in the first place. Some people might try to blame it on foreign influence and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, if you want to go down that route, we could also say that China would actually be part of Japan right now if it wasn't for the Allies helping out during World War II, bombing Japan, sending supplies to China, helping China. So, you know, if you want to go down that sort of rhetorical nonsense path, there's a lot that can be said. And it's just a waste of time, and it's a fantasy. So remember, even though the CCP has been successful in all these building projects and all these like raising people out of poverty, do not forget that it was them that put those people into poverty in the first place. It's literally like if I cut myself and started to bleed and I put a band-aid on myself and everyone says, look how wonderful this man is. He's such a miracle worker that he can put a band-aid and heal himself. All right, so there is a little bit of a, you know, a perspective you have to take there. Now, I got to get back to the whole point that these people that I saw develop and grow, some from a young age of 10 or 12 or 13, others from, you know, the age, my age, they were in their 20s and now they're in their late 30s, early 40s. I saw so much potential. I absolutely fell in love with China, and that is why I always say that it's okay to love China. And it's the people that I love at the end of the day. But unfortunately, I've seen the same people stifled. I've seen that things like IP theft are rewarded. Things like creativity are not rewarded because it's a waste of time. People are stifled in their education. They're not allowed to think outside of the box. It's all about conformity. I've seen how the government and society has shaped some of those very, very promising people into mindless drones, and that really, really upsets me. There's been a shift in my videos, which a lot of people have noticed over the last couple of years, and that shift has been to criticizing some of the shortcomings of China. Of course, I do try my best to balance it out because I don't want to be a negative Nancy all the time. But when you are so deeply affected by what's going on around you in your life, and I mean this absolutely genuinely, when you see the people that have so much hope and so much strength and so much love turn against you in the blink of an eye just because the government decides that it's that time of the week to say that foreigners are bad, it breaks your heart. And, you know, I don't want to blame these people that turn against me or that turn against foreigners or that, you know, exhibit this funny sort of outrage towards the Hong Kong protesters who quite literally just want to be able to express their freedom of speech and want Beijing to keep their promise. You know, I don't like to see these vicious, horrible remarks and attacks from people that I love, people that I feel deeply for. Let me cut to the point of this video. The point of this video is that we cannot follow the example of the CCP and of the Chinese government and what they are teaching the people of China to do, and that is hate. And that is to just blindly say that they are bad because they're bad. This jingoism, this nonsense that goes on all the time, all this rhetoric you read on the Chinese internet, all these attacks, you know, the vandalism, the nonsense that happens everywhere all around the world right now, because that's just the thing to do, is not how we should retaliate. We are better than that. And I'm talking about not foreigners are better than that. I'm talking about Chinese people, American people, any kind of people, anyone in the world. I don't want you to look at China and say, China sucks, I hate China. I want you to look at China and say, the Chinese people are just like you and me. They're awesome people. There's really a lot of potential there for these people. They're wonderful people. But we can still say that China's government makes mistakes. China's government sucks balls, to be honest. It's a horrible government. I really don't like it. I don't care what anyone says about what they've done to lift people out of poverty, because you've heard my opinion on that. They have done some successful things, but that doesn't mean that they're good. It's a government based on a foreign ideology where they basically IP thefted Karl Marx's communism, and they've mixed it in with sort of traditional Chinese feudal emperor stuff, and that's what you have today. Is you have a government that's just basically putting out fires everywhere, left and right, and the only way that it really keeps the support of its citizens is by making sure the money keeps flowing into China, and that anyone who's got anything to do with dissent is shut off immediately. It's not a good system, and as much respect as you may have for the Chinese government and its achievements, which of course there are a lot of things to admire, we must at the same time also acknowledge the stifling sort of setup that's happening in China, the people that are being hurt by this regime, the people that are turned into mindless drones who will turn on you in an instant if the government says so, if the popular opinion says so. Don't react in kind, please. And remember that it's okay to love China. Thank you for listening to my rant, everybody. I like to be as honest as I can about my feelings when it comes to China, and it's a mixed bag. It's kind of like having an ex who you just had the most tumultuous relationship with in the world. See you next Friday, guys. And next Friday, let's have a beer together over here on SerpentZA, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget, Wednesday, you can check out Lao86, who covers things in China from a different perspective and, cross-cultural relationships. And of course, we've got ADVChina, which is probably the best if you want to see some more in-depth topics where we actually ride motorcycles and discuss it and go visit all these different Asian countries and stuff. Go check it out. And I'll also see you on the podcast. So until next time, you know the drill. As always, stay awesome.